Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Rolka. Welcome to this week's live event. This is your live event where we take questions and do demonstrations and talk about all things musical and or otherwise. Before we get started, if you communicate with me via Twitter or just are aware of my Twitter quote unquote feed, you will have seen a very different link this week. Hello to Deus. Which featured a video of the Go-Go's, the old 80s pop group singing a vacation. Hello, Maestro. Why do I think Adele damaged her voice for the second time in 6 years? Natasha, hello. Striker, good day. Hey, Striker. Hello, everybody. Let me finish my thought here first, and I will get to your question, Ronaldo. But I'm going to take a vacation, a short little vacation, a couple weeks. So this is our last live event for the month of July. The next live event we will have is August 5th. August 5th, at which time we'll resume all general operations and things like that. Hey, quick question, Striker. Do you think you're going to be around for most of the event today? If so, could I make you our moderator? And if we get a little spam attack, an unwanted spam and cheese omelet, if you could just keep an eye on things and block the users, you just click on the three little dot icons on the far right hand side of any offensive comments and away they go, and you can just block the user as well. Let me know if you're up for that. I would appreciate it. So yeah, we're going to have a little break from live events for a couple weeks. I've still got a bunch of stuff that's set to release, so you'll still get new videos while I'm away. I'm going to be backpacking. Thank you, Striker. I really appreciate that. I see that. Let's see. Oh, add moderator. There you go, Striker. You've now been enlisted. Thank you very much. I truly appreciate it. Now I lost my train of thought. Oh, in any case, yeah, I'm going to be backpacking in the High Sierra around Yosemite Valley for a couple weeks. And it's one of the things that I do for fun. I like rock climbing. I like being in the great outdoors, particularly in the Sierra, which was a big reason why we returned to California, in fact. Okay. Why did Adele damage her voice? Honestly, the answer is quite. I think I'm not her teacher, right? And I've never worked directly with her, so I can only postulate based upon what I have heard in her singing, which is that she had a habit of doing a lot of glottal attacks at or basically right in the range of the secondo passaggio for her fa. Again, I'm making a supposition about that too, based upon how she uses her voice. So she's inducing a lot of muscle engagement around the thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, the thyroarytenoid muscles, and then she's using those glottal attacks, which in and of themselves are fairly fatiguing for the voice. And she's doing it every night, again and again and again and again and again. And our voices, the vocal folds are really small, and they don't deal with that very well, much less with a touring schedule the likes of which someone such as Adele would maintain. So, and you might consider too, even that aspect of her technique is just one small aspect of the way that she may be carrying tension in her voice. There are quite likely other aspects of her phonation which are not as obvious, that are going to induce tension as well. So all those little things, singing, in a live show for, I don't know, an hour and a half or so, 2 hours. I don't know how long her shows were. That's going to quickly fatigue and hurt your voice. Hello, Natasha. Fred, hello, Fred. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Hey, I've been pretty sick last couple days. I'm having a sore throat. Any tips? Rest. If your throat is hurting you, rest. Stay hydrated. Relax. Read a book. Watch some, I don't know, something, I was going to say TV or a movie, but I don't know how many people have TVs anymore. I think in one of my way far away gone live events, I mentioned that the last thing that I watched on television proper was the O.J. Simpson trial, which also gives you an idea of how long I have not had a TV and also how old I might be. Yeah, rest yourself. Study music, read it, listen to it. Figure out, listen to your favorite piece of music and go buy a chart for it and follow along with the chart and analyze the chord structure and melodic content. That would be cool. Just off the top of my head. Ram, good afternoon. Greetings from South Texas. Awesome. Are you like in El Paso, perhaps, or somewhere around there? I've been to Waco Tanks climbing, which is awesome. FYI, for those of you that are new, I always forget these little bits and bobs. For those of you that are new, if you've asked a question, I will do my absolute best to get to it. I get to most things within our hour allotment, but it might take me a little bit of time, so do just be patient. Striker at Natasha. Chris, dude, you have helped me get to a whole new level even during slight vocal strain. You rock. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And awesome. Thank you, Mai. I'm looking forward to it. Thumbs up. Bob Griffin. Hey, Jeff. Thank you for all you do. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. I really, really appreciate that. Welcome. I don't recall seeing your user ID at a live event before, so enjoy. It's a really, really great crowd of folks. In as much as, I have things to offer, there's all kinds of good stuff that happens in the chat as well. Tadeus, they say singing is also a mental aspect. What exactly should I be thinking about while I'm singing, especially when looking to sing with freedom, ease, and no tension? That's a very, very interesting question, Tadeus. Thank you for asking that. Ultimately, it would be my hope that we would all be what one might say in the moment. This gets a little kind of weird and metaphysical, but when I think about the times that I have been in a performance scenario where I feel that I can objectively say that was a flow experience, there is this sensation of being the observer and the observed. In other words, the distance and difference between what is on the outside and what is on the inside is insignificant. That there's this really old sci-fi book called Songmaster, which I got in 8th grade, when I was 13 or something. And most of it's not an awesome book, really. But there's this concept where they're talking about singing in music, and the music is meant to fill every cubic inch of the room that you are performing in, but not 1 cubic inch more and nor any nothing less. It must just fit that space. And I don't think that necessarily helps you in terms of conceptualizing what it is to be, in the flow experience. But that's something that I always think about, particularly when I'm doing sets where I'm playing with amplification, because it's very, very easy with amplification to overpower everything in the room. All the conversation, all of the what's not, everything. You can overblow everything. And I'm always I always try to engage my audience in a conversation. I want it to be a conversation between what I'm doing musically and what they're doing. And so I play these games of dynamics when I'm performing, where I might push a little bit on them to get them to kind of speak up to the people to whom they're speaking, and then I'll die out really quickly. And I'll make these wide dynamic shifts. And before long, you can start to feel the room moving along with the volume, the dynamics, and changes in dynamics that you're using. And usually, not always, but usually, when you stop, that's when you find that people have been paying attention to you, and they'll applaud, or they'll talk to you, or they'll say something. I'm thinking about when I used to do a lot of wine bar gigs, where you are truly music as furniture. And you're there to facilitate conversation, and the ebb and flow and dynamic, I thought, always made it a really good environment for me to be seen, but for people to also do their conversations. It didn't always work out very well. I've had plenty of people say really not particularly kind things, but you just kind of roll with it. Yes, Mrs. Webster, a bit of adventuring. There's a lot of places. I've done a lot of backpacking and hiking. I've done the John Muir Trail twice, including 2011, where it was snow for miles and miles and miles of snowfields and sun cups and things. But in this, I'm going to stick closer to the valley, but I'm going to kind of do a bit of a circuit around Yosemite. I'm going to head up north, perhaps to the Grand Canyon of the Tuolumne, and then more towards the south of the park to Red Peaks Pass, make a big loop around the thing. Deadpan Man, finally I catch you live. Welcome. Stryker is dancing with himself. Today, I seem to have throat and tongue tension when doing lip trills and tongue trills. Why is this? Tongue tension happens for a lot of reasons. I would keep on practicing the tongue loosening exercises. There's a new tongue relaxation video coming out on July 29th, so you can check that out. But tongue and throat tension, that can be a challenging one to shake. Stick to your very, very comfortable range and stick to a narrow range. Mrs. Webster, hey, I'm away for the next few weeks as well. Exactly, there you go. FOMO. From one... I don't know what that means. Maybe you can enlighten me. Yes, Mrs. Webster, Stryker's been promoted. Chris, other than humidifiers, boiling water, or nebulizers, what would you recommend as far as exercises and other non-intrusive things if you have to sing slightly hoarse? Yeah, I'm not into lozenges or teas. Typically speaking, they make me more phlegmy. Yeah, you're talking about steaming a lot and things that are going to really help a lot with your sinuses. And if that's because you have a postnasal drip, you may need to see your doctor about that to help with the postnasal drip. You haven't mentioned water. Staying well hydrated can help slightly with being hoarse. You might try the sort of like a singer's tea. It's not really tea, but I guess it's tea. I don't know. It's where you take some ginger, boil the ginger, do let it cool, and then literally a few drops of freshly squeezed lemon, and then again an incredibly small amount, like a few drops of honey. You barely taste it in the potion. It'll be mostly ginger. But you gotta kind of find a balance where the ginger's not so overpowering, the lemon's not so overpowering, the honey. You don't want anything to be overpowering. You want it to be in a fair balance, and that can be very, very comforting. I drink that stuff by the gallon when I need to teach or sing, and I have a bit of hoarseness or fatigue. Excellent, excellent. Do rest up. Today, yes, I'm in Northern California. I know the 6 p.m. London time for the live event is a nod to the time that I spent in England. I only just got back to California about 4 months ago now. Oh, I thought, okay, Mai's at Tadeus. Welcome at Deadpan Man, yes. Natasha at Stryker Ronaldo. Okay, thank you. Have a nice vacation, Meister, with your family. You deserve it. You showed extreme hard work this year. Thank you. I really, really appreciate it. Actually, I'm going solo. My wife and twins are heading out to England to be with my in-laws, my wife's family, for a little while to celebrate their birthday and things. Tadeus at Mrs. Webster at Tadeus, Mrs. Webster at Tadeus, Trinity. Hey, Trinity. Praise God. God bless you and your family in the name of Jesus. Hey, everyone. Jeff, I'm at work to get back to you regarding the aspect we discussed. Wanted to stop by and update you. I scrolled poorly. Thank you, Trinity. Welcome. It's good to see you and hear from you. Thank you, Trinity. I'm glad that the YouTube channel is working out. XOXO means hugs and kisses, laughing out loud. Well, awesome. Thank you. Mrs. Webster's going to think about the Tadeus question for a while. Thank you for asking. Trinity Preacher, missed the chat about 3 weeks now. Miss you. Indeed, welcome back, Trinity. Natasha, have you ever tried Mount Everest? No, 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 no. Mount Everest is truly in the realm of mountaineering. That is an entirely different thing from the kind of stuff that I do. I like to climb. I like technical rock climbing. So think shorter cliffs. Typically less than 200 feet. Somewhere in that 100 to 200 feet. Although in the past I've done a lot of multi-pitch climbing. But no mountaineering. Like I don't do any glacier travel. I don't do any like especially in the Alps where you're waking up at midnight so that you can be on, heading up the mountain by 1 a.m., like that kind of stuff. I'll be traveling almost entirely on trails. If there's some easy off-trail adventures that I can do, I may consider those. But I'm kind of just taking it as it comes. I don't have a terrible agenda for the hike that I'm going to do this time. Yeah, probably not going to do any mountaineering. I'm trying to think of the biggest thing I've climbed. It's going to be either Royal Arches or the East Buttress of Middle Cathedral in Yosemite Valley. Each of those cliffs, I think Royal Arches is about 1,500 feet, and East Butt is 1,300 or something like that, 1,300 feet, 1,500 feet. And those are rock climbs as opposed to Everest, which is combines some rock climbing, but it's primarily glacier travel. And hiking in deep snow and things like that. Even in the best of situations, it's incredibly dangerous stuff. What I do is not dangerous, not really dangerous. Striker at Jeff, my voice teacher said my dynamics made her seasick. Not so much now. Her teaching and guidance about my breath control and use in my dynamics stopped her need for Dramamine. This is good. This is good. We don't want that for sure. Deborah, I feel like my belting sounds more like a very strong head voice than a belt. Any tips? Well, maybe it is. And I would say that's not a bad thing. Particularly depending on the tessitura that you're using for that. It's hard to say. I mean, I'm not an advocate of belting. And I think that belting from time to time is probably okay within the confines of remaining one major second above your secondo passaggio, so limiting the range that you will do that to. But the thing is that if you're widening your vowels as you go through the zona de passaggio and you're allowing the cricothyroid muscles to begin elongating the vocal fold, then you're not belting. So honestly, strain more. I mean, that's what it's going to end up being if you wish to force the thyroarytenoid muscles to maintain phonation when normally they would be releasing some control to the cricothyroid muscles is to induce a little bit of engagement of those muscles. Yeah, that's why I recommend that belting be done on a limited capacity and within a limited range. If you really want to expand your range, then you need to make a smooth transition through the secondo passaggio. That is the accepted technique for expansion of range in the most professional of communities. Trinity Preacher, Jeff, you're an amazing teacher, and God has definitely allowed me to develop my range of voice. Oh, I think I read that. Sorry to repeat that, but I could repeat that several times, actually. Thank you very much. Fear of missing out. Thank you, Mrs. Webster. Fear of missing out. Got it. Wait. Ginger, lemon, and honey tea, cold or warm? I usually say warm. Yeah, warm, just not hot. We want to avoid extremes. So not super hot, not super cold. Just nice and comforting. And if you're really sick and you've got like a body ache and stuff like that, then I find that sort of a little bit warmer honey, ginger, lemon can be really soothing, and it just feels kind of nice, and it does help us stay hydrated too. Greg, how did I meet my wife? Humorously enough, I was out backpacking. I met my wife when I was backpacking in Yosemite Valley. I had gone to Yosemite. I was training for what was going to be a solo John Muir Trail hike. So the John Muir Trails Depending on which guidebook you use, it's like 211 or 220 miles. And you can start in Yosemite Valley, or you can start at Mount Whitney, and you go between the two via these trails. So I had gotten a wilderness permit, and I had left Yosemite Valley and gone up past Vernal Falls and past Nevada Falls to an area called Little Yosemite Valley. It's about 4.5 or 5 miles into the back country out of Yosemite Valley. And I just, I was going to do this big circuit around the area, including Half Dome and some other stuff. And, you get to talking to people in the wilderness. It's a pretty friendly place. And one thing led to another, and she was visiting from England and came and visited me in San Francisco. And then I went to England a few times, and one thing led to another, and that's how I met my wife. I met her in Yosemite Valley. Mrs. Webster, sigh, all this talk of cliffs makes me jealous. A prairie girl here can watch your dog run away for days. In this expression I've heard, that's so cool. My daughters were just asking about why places are flat the other day, and I told them that we'd have to head out to Kansas so we could have a look at flat, so they could see that. Deadpan Man, at Jeff, please explain what staccato is. Staccato is a musical term meant to mean short and light. Along with that, you get a concept. You get a sense of detachment between the surrounding pitches. So, for example, if I sang legato, where there's a connection, that's all connected, and the notes adjoin one another. Now, if I want to maintain that tempo and be staccato, you can hear the space in between the pitches. It becomes very challenging when it's slow. Slow in legato. If I'm going to maintain that tempo and be staccato, I have to account for the space. And those are really great exercises for us to practice maintaining our engagement and suspension. Because in all of those pauses, I'm still, my body, if you were to poke at me, it would feel like I was still singing, like the engagement in the rectus abdominis muscles and the inner and outer oblique muscles, which are reasonably superficial. You can feel those. If you were to poke at them, it would feel like I was still singing, even though there's nothing coming out of my mouth. Mrs. Webster, my mistake was jumping into singing without warming up. I became hoarse, and it lasted for a few hours. My question, what is going on in my esophagus that causes that? Any long-term damage expected? Hard to say about long-term damage. Words to live by. We say this when we're rock climbing all the time. My Canadian rock climbing partner for many, many years used to say, warm up slow, go, go, go. Warm up fast, never last. So warm up slow, go, go, go. Warm up fast, never last. It's really hard to say what happened. Most likely it's a little bit of more muscle engagement higher up in your range, a little bit of force on the voice in a not entirely beneficial way that's causing that irritation. Really hard to say. Usually when we're not warmed up, it's that our bodies aren't really warmed up. We're not really physically engaged and ready to sing. And that means that the voice isn't getting the amount of subglottic support that it requires for proper phonation. The voice, ever wanting to give you the note that your brain is telling it to give, will get that note by inducing muscle tension to try to squeeze it out. And so you probably just weren't warmed up enough, really, didn't have body going and things like that. Had a little bit more muscle engagement around the larynx than was ideal. Striker at Jeff, a lot of posts recently are for a voice type in women that is very Sade, reminiscent, sexy, smooth, low voice. Big question has been, how do I sound like this voice type? How do you teach that? Well, there's a lot of thoughts that cross my mind when I think about that. One is to remember that it's all relative, that we can emulate Sade's style, whatever fach we may be. So if you and I'm just, I'm thinking about, like, I can't even remember the name of the song that I'm thinking of by Sade, but in any case, she definitely has a very sultry tone. There's a little partial abduction, a little separation in there. So there's a very, very minimal amount of breathiness, I think, in her vocal delivery. And I would also say, too, not perhaps as much singer's format or mask resonance as we might naturally use, but it's not far off either. I would say it's fairly close, but slightly back. So it would be, I would have to get with the vocalist and really, really listen and evaluate just how they're doing attacks and how they're doing releases, how they're shaping vowels and things like that. All of that goes into style. And that's how I would work with it. Reese, Jeff, I'm a male baritone. I can't find my mixed voice. And I've watched some videos on it. I might have found it, but it sounded bad, like a silly voice. Does every male get to belt in mixed voice? Okay, so first of all, welcome. I don't recall seeing your user ID. So welcome to the live event. You've got a couple conflicting concepts here. Belting in mixed voice isn't the way it works. If you're in your mix range, then you can choose to continue inducing engagement in the thyroarytenoid muscles. That's your chest voice, and that will result in belting. If you are getting into your mixed voice, then you are allowing the cricothyroid muscles to elongate the vocal fold. And that is not belting. Okay, that is preparing the way to make a smooth transition through the secondo passaggio. That is what I advocate in my teaching. And that is the accepted performance standard in professional singing. Now, if you have been belting in the past or squeezing high notes out or pulling chest, as it's often referred to as well, then yeah, you're probably going to sound a little silly when you start to release some of that tension around the thyroarytenoid muscle. There is a disparity in the muscle engagement between thyroarytenoid muscles and cricothyroid muscles. As that disparity becomes resolved, as that gets resolved in your practice, then the sound of your voice will start to match from thyroarytenoid dominant to cricothyroid dominant. And that's the process that I teach in the videos. You might check out how to sing high notes for male voices or something like that, I think is the title of it. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, they go through the entire process. Striker Kane, like Sabrina Claudio, Halsey, etc. Or maybe not teach, but learn it. Teaching and learning similar skill sets, one requires more observations, which is something I really, really try to do with my teaching, is to get the singer with whom I'm working with to recognize what's happening, to observe the phenomenon so that we can work on it together. I'd have to listen to Sabrina, Claudio, and Halsey. And by the way, Striker, I have not forgotten about the chess thing. I completely spaced it, and I apologize for forgetting about that. I saw it in my notes this morning, and I also spaced on the question I was supposed to answer. Someone asked me about what they're supposed to feel when they're making when they're trying to use their cricothyroid dominant singing voice, their head voice, when they're doing that transition. And the truth is that it's debatable that there's anything to feel. Some schools of thought suggest that there are no nerve endings in that area of the body. And so you cannot actually feel or perceive the cartilage and muscle movements that signify the cricothyroid muscles elongating the vocal fold directly. You can only feel it by like the nerve endings that are in the outside of your throat and the skin there. And I think this is in part why we get so many different ideas on how to extend into our higher range. There are, in fact, teachers out in the world, and specifically on YouTube, that are teaching head voice, telling people that it's belting, and that's simply not the case. The sensations that I feel can be best described as a widening. Initially, when I first began to sing successfully across the secondo passaggio, it felt very hollow. It sounded hollow. It felt kind of swallowy and open, which is again one of those things that you hear voice teachers say. But it's really, really crucial to consider that there be no air in the voice. So if you have that sound, ew, 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 where you've got a lot of air, or a glottal attack, ew, ew, those are not good ways to start the process of learning about your upper register, your cricothyroid dominant singing voice, head voice. Ew, 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 ew. In that sound, it's obviously not balanced in terms of the resonance. However, you can hear that it's a solid sound. The vocal fold is closed. It's adducted or pressed together throughout phonation, throughout singing. And that is the starting point for developing our head voice. And there's very little sensation around it. It just feels open. It feels, I've often said, and in the videos I mostly say, light. And that is primarily in response to talking to people who have squeezed out high notes, who have been trying to belt in the past. And to someone who has been belting or squeezing or pulling chest, then it will feel very light. But the term I'm favoring now much more so is balanced, because light is too frequently misinterpreted to mean airy. And that is the absolutely not what I'm talking about. There's no way I want that to be airy in this teaching. But the sensation kind of open, I think this is also quite likely that with the concept of the laryngeal tilt, which as far as I can tell from reading up on it a little bit, they're really talking about the hyoid cartilage, and they're talking about the cricothyroid muscles engaging, rotating the hyoid cartilage and elongating the vocal fold. That's what happens when we make this transition into our upper register. And I would postulate, so I'm giving you an opinion, this is not based in fact, but my opinion is that someone had a sensitivity to that area of the outer skin of the throat, or even into the internal mechanisms, and could kind of feel that hyoid cartilage rotating. And so they developed their theory based upon those physical sensations. Either that, or they looked at like an MRI of somebody doing it, or scoped it with an oscilloscope and observed it that way and decided to teach it like that. All legitimate means by which to teach, I think. I think as a teacher, I'm always interested in the most effective way for the client with whom I'm working to achieve the skill set. So you'll rarely hear me really denounce a particular technique, because I think to do so does not acknowledge that there are different modes of learning, that people learn in different ways. My job as an instructor is to try to understand the modes of learning of the clients with whom I'm working and help them. I need to teach them in a way that they understand. Because when I look at all these different methods, and all of them I think have salient points. I've had clients ask me to look at like the Frizzell methods, and I've looked at some of the Seth Riggs methods, and I've read a variety of different versions of bel canto and things like that. And teachers will use different modes to try to instruct their students in the most effective ways. And I think that's the important thing, is that we can look at these things, but I feel like we have to scratch through the surface layer and begin to understand what the method is saying in as empirical a fashion as possible. So while I may not employ the verbiage of laryngeal tilt, I can read about it and look at it and say, okay, well, that might resonate with somebody. That might really work. That for them, conceptualizing that tilting cartilage might really, really help. And that's my job, is to help. Case in point, like I use analogies all the time in my teaching. I had a client who was a boxer. So I didn't have to, but in order to be as effective as I could, we talked a lot about boxing and about different ways of, different metaphors and things like that they could easily visualize and conceptualize. It made it easier for them to employ the types of singing techniques that we were talking about. Okay, I really went on with that, and I'm probably way far behind now, but let me just say, it seems like we're doing okay. We're doing all right. Sophia Lewis, do you have any tips on navigating the passaggio? Absolutely. The channel has tons and tons of that. Be patient. Do it in small doses. Look at the videos on how to sing over the break. The endurance in the mix voice, that's about endurance in the zona de passaggio. And then there's a couple more videos like that. You might have a look in the high notes playlist. Sumit, Indian singing differs in terms of usage of the vowel sounds and forming words, and the pronunciation is a bit different. Have you had any experience with it? Yes, I have. I've always found it incredibly fun. I'm so sorry. I cannot remember the dialects that I've worked with clients. They were South Indian, from the South. But yeah, the thing that I find most fun about a lot of contemporary Indian music will have the music bed in Western tonal traditions. So it'll be kind of in a tuning and chords that you would hear almost anywhere. But then the melodies will still employ aspects of the ragas that the melodies were derived from, and that can be really, really fun to get the scoops and things like that just right. I've always found it really, really intriguing and fun to work with. Bob Griffin, thank you, Jeff. My wife and I purchased your products about 3 months ago. Thank you for doing that. That really helps the channel. I've been using them nearly every day. I can tell you are helping me to improve more than several voice teachers. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really glad it's working out. Trinity Preacher, my boys 10 and 7 are amazed to know you're married and that you have twins. They actually asked me a few weeks ago if you're married, and today when I told them, guys, Jeff is married. Yeah, absolutely true. Absolutely true. Mrs. Webster at Trinity Preacher, stay until the very end, and Jeff is often met with giggles at the end of our sessions. True that. They hang on for about that long. Deadpan Man, will I do a bass warm-up video? Yes, I will. It'll be a couple weeks down the road. Actually, you know what, Deadpan Man? I wanted to do one more like sets of videos or something like that. That's what I'm gonna do. On this week before I head off into the hills. I wanted to record one more set of videos that I could have up for release on August 5th. So I'm going to do some low range stuff, and I will include the bass range in the baritone. So I'll label it bass baritone warm up, and it'll go down. It's going to go, you're going to need sonar to find those notes. You're not going to hear them so much as feel the rumble. It's going to be the rumble. Ready to rumble. Yeah. Reese, I have another question. When I sing, my voice gets tired easily. Like if I sing one demanding song, I can't sing another demanding song. Is this because I'm forcing my voice? In short, yes. For proper balanced phonation, we need to have a balance between subglottic pressure, what some might call support or airflow, and the amount of engagement that's in the thyroarytenoid and cricothyroid musculature in the larynx. When those things are balanced, then the vocal fold is only using as much muscle control as it really needs for the note that you're singing. And typically speaking, the voice is as released as it can be. There's always some muscle engagement there in order to get the balance right, but it's a vastly more efficient means to use your voice. If you don't have proper subglottic pressure, again, airflow or support generically, then your voice will try to get the pitch any way it can, and that usually means muscle tension at the larynx, squeezing, pulling. This is often why you get new vocalists pulling chest or straining in their upper register, because at that point that the balance of thyroarytenoid muscles and cricothyroid muscles starts to change, and if we don't allow that change to occur, we end up straining the thyroarytenoid muscles. This is also called belting. So yeah, there's an imbalance in the system. Start by addressing your airflow, and do so in conjunction with short vowel syllables in your thyroarytenoid range, and keep it narrow, very, very narrow. So small little changes in pitch and things like that. Very comfortable. You want the most comfortable part of your range. Work towards consistent, efficient phonation with all 5 vowels, and then move on from there. David Walsh, good day. What do you consider the usual or typical range for tenor? Varies for pop, concert or opera singer, chorus or soloist. Just wondering on your take. Yeah, you get different typical tessituras for all of those, really. And furthermore, in the pop world, a lot of those tunes will be catered to the vocalist. So, you talk about a Freddie Mercury, I guess, and there's some stipulation that he was a baritone and not a tenor. I know you said tenor, but really, your question applies to, in the theoretical aspects of your question apply to all vocalists. It varies widely. For the tenor, a fairly typical range will be C3 to C5, give or take. There are always going to be exceptions to that. I would say that I'm thinking more of like opera arias when I say C5. Most art songs, typically, again, thinking off the top of my head, I'm sure there are exceptions, seem to top out around G4. For tenors, for pop, whatever, the sky's the limit, basically. You think about a Jeff Buckley was singing E flat, F5, maybe even G5 in the Britten, the Lully Lulay. I think that was Benjamin Britten that wrote that. And Jeff Buckley, I think he sings like a G, was that a G? Is that really a G2? Yeah, I think he sees a G2 on the album Grace as well. I'm not sure on that. You have to check that one. I mean, that's a monstrous range. So, and for choir singing, thinking. And I'm thinking about Bach chorales right now. And I want to say, like, off the top of my head, F4, give or take. Somewhere in that range is probably where the tenors top out. Again, there'll be exceptions. Sophia, my mixed voice is so soft and breathy. How can I make this stronger? That's not your mixed voice, is the short answer to that question. If it's breathy, that's falsetto tone production. You're abducting. The vocal folds are separating. Your mixed voice will have the vocal folds adducted. Start from the top, work your way down. You're going to have to probably be very, very hooty. If it's airy like that, that's the wrong sound. Sirens can sometimes help with this. So you do those like those kinds of noises can help you find your cricothyroid dominant singing voice. And then from the siren, move your way towards octave descending arpeggios. The how to sing over the break videos and how to sing high notes videos all deal with this. And furthermore, I might add that the first thing that I'm going to do, like I'm horribly behind on all my projects this year, but one of the first things that I'm going to start working on when I get back from my vacation is an online course for working through the registration event, how to sing, to do exactly what you're asking in this question. So it will probably take me conservatively 6 to 8 weeks to make it, but it will be available then in September, October. If you are a subscriber to my email list at jeffrolka.com, you will be informed as to when that course becomes available. Reese, you're very welcome. You're very, very welcome. I want this to be a very welcoming and free environment. I'm so grateful to like Stryker. Last week, Mandy helped out. JC's Radiant Ray helps out all the time in helping to maintain this very, very good, constructive environment where we can make sure that questions and things like that get answered, and it's great. It's just a great crew of people. The people that show up every week are fantastic, and you're welcome. I'm glad you can make it too. Who asked this question? Octavio 8. Oh, the question about the sensations around the registration event. I'm afraid I don't remember. It was a user ID in a comment that I recognized. I put a link in the comment that showed a Gray's anatomy of the structure of the larynx, but I'm afraid I don't remember the user ID. It was really, really early on in the week, and I felt like I felt like I could do a better job addressing it here than trying to write out some type of response. I hope they find it halfway through the thing. What about Per Bristow's method? Have you ever checked it out? I have not checked it out. I will check it out. I'm intrigued. Brett, welcome. Good to see you. Jeff is Mr. Passaggio. It's kind of funny. It sort of worked out that way. Like I didn't anticipate that happening, and I was very, very nervous about beginning to open up conversations and issue videos that spoke specifically to the technique around the secondo passaggio and registration events. But thanks to the community at large and this community and the questions, my most of my gratitude is that you folks, and generally speaking, most of the comments are in the form of actual questions. And that has worked out perfectly, because a question allows me to engage in a conversation about this subject, and hopefully stimulates more learning on all our parts. So I'm going to learn about Per Bristow's method now and see what's going on over there. And you can check out what I talk about with Richard Miller and Shirley Emmons, and all this sorts of stuff. And we all learn more, and we all grow and benefit from it. Striker Kane at Rebret. Sumit, South Indian Carnatic music. That sounds familiar. I've certainly heard Carnatic before. I want to say it was Dagal, but I don't even know if Dagal is a South Indian dialect. I could be wrong about that. Tamil, that's it. Striker, good pull. Tamil, that's it. Tamil is it. That's the dialect. Nicely done, Striker. How do you know that? Ale, how do you properly sustain a tone? That's a very subtle and interesting question. I talk about sustaining tones in the terms of the grocery bag analogy. So if I had a grocery bag and I said, stick out your arm, and you stuck your arm out, and I put a bag of groceries in it and said, okay, keep your arm up. Over time, it would feel heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier until ultimately it failed and you dropped the bag of groceries, even though nothing was changing, right? Like I'm not sitting there putting oranges in the grocery bag, or bits of lead, or, something like that. Ducks. Anyone get the Monty Python reference? So, it's just a bag of groceries. And on a micro scale, that's what it is like for us to sustain pitches. We don't press a key, strike some strings, and let the note decay. We have to keep on putting energy into the tone. We have to keep engaging and lifting and re-energizing our expansion. Otherwise, things tend to go bad. Anything bad can happen. We can go flat. We can, start to get airy. We can, name it. There's all sorts of ways to do it incorrectly. But if we keep the engagement happening, the vocal fold will retain its release and will stay in tune and will have a nice sustained pitch. I find that this is often taught conceptually as thinking about continuing to a crescendo throughout out the tone. And I sometimes do that. I sometimes employ that as a strategy. But I mostly want the vocalist to try to get in touch with the energy of their rectus abdominis muscles and inner and outer oblique muscles, their engagement, and the engagement of their suspension, the lateral expansion, and start to come into touch with that, because that's the foundation. That's what's really acting on it. And if thinking about making a crescendo helps, that's fine. I'm happy to use it to start to develop a pattern, but I'm gonna be basically trying to get their attention onto the musculature that's actually creating the suspension and enabling the sustain of the note. Really cool question. 5280 coaching. Thank you. Yeah. I'm not as silly this week as I was last week. A little silly. I'm a little silly, but not too silly today. A little bit. I'm always kind of a little silly. Oh man, I've fallen way far behind. Sona, you heard a Korean singer named Sohyang. She is considered a master at technique and belting. If you haven't seen her sing, I'd recommend to check her out. I will do that. Thank you, Reese. Yes, G2, Jeff Lucky. Thank you, Stryker. Reese, should a singer count only supported range or all notes you can hit, whether it's supported or not? The term supported is used. I don't particularly like the way that that's used. They're using that to suggest that when your voice sounds full over the secondo passaggio, it's supported falsetto. But actually what it is well adducted phonation. That's the actual technique to have a seamless transition through the secondo passaggio and have a consistent full range sound. So it's labeling it as something that precedes the label they're giving it. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I feel like it's confusing things. And I don't talk about the voice in those terms. I think about voice as ultimate range versus usable range. So there's always going to be notes that are at the extreme ends of your vocal range. And then realistically for performance, it's going to be a little bit narrower than that. I think about... my focus is all about successful transitions through the passaggi points. And that means that the sound will be consistent. It's not enough to sing a high note and scratch it out. It must be consistent with the remainder of your range. So what that means is that everything that I'm teaching would fall into the category of supported. And the other stuff, where it's airy or it's clearly balanced towards a head voice, it's not consistent with the chest voice, that type of phonation would be an exception, not the rule. And typically, people don't need a lot of training to do that. Yeah. So I hope that kind of answers the question. Sumit at Stryker. Stephen Kaplan, aloha and aloha to you. Sumit, and Punjabi is pretty much North Indian, I see. Stryker at Sumit, laughing all yes, that makes sense. Mrs. Webster, hey everyone, let's continue to visit and discuss at the Facebook group Sequencer. That's right. Please talk amongst yourself on Sequencer while I'm away for the next couple of weeks. Octavio 8, you're welcome. Mrs. Webster at Ale. Well, the pure burst of feeling instead of singing scales. It was interesting. The first time I tried something, it completely changed my voice. I'll check it out. Robert says hello to you, Striker. 5280 coaching ducks, like the witch made of wood, so she floats like a duck. Exactly right. Exactly. What else floats? Houses, little bits of lead, ducks. A duck. Striker at Jeff. I work in a nerd world where many of my nerd friends are from India. Trupti is from Tamil region and many other Punjab. Very cool. I did not know that. Interesting. Thanks for the intro, Striker. Oh, scrolling challenged here. Okay. Mrs. Webster, we all benefit and learn from each other. This is a unique group, so grateful to be part of this gracious community. Very positive leadership. Thank you very much. Thank you. I really, really appreciate that. And I really do want it to be positive. Positive and a little bit humorous, a little goofy. Because probably in response to my teaching upbringing, because I was a lot of times taught with force and fear. And it sort of worked, but it often didn't feel very good. And basically me as a teacher has come a long ways from where I began, and I went the humor route instead of the fear and other negative things that one can do to try to teach. Maya's got a big heart. That's awesome. Striker Kane +1 Miss Webster. Natasha, what made Freddie Mercury's voice so good? Because I hear a lot of people speaking about how great singer was. Oh man, I could go on and on. Really, really great balanced phonation is where I would begin with that. I mean, that's why it's so seamless from top to bottom. He just has a very beautiful balance, which starts with great subglottic pressure and good attention to the transitions through his registration events. He's very flexible and could do lots of different things. That's just getting started. Mrs. Webster +5 nerd cred, love it. Robret, don't worry about being silly. You have a beautiful spirit. Humor is a good thing. I look forward to your live streams. Wonderful, thank you. Ale, thank you, and thank you, Mrs. Webster. Ale, the tag thing still won't work, so I'm gonna try and rely on magic when I'm done. Excellent. Sophia, Jeff, my range is from B2 to F6. However, many singing teachers have told me my golden octave is from F4 to F5, although I can easily hit C6. Would you say I'm a soprano or mezzo? It's all about where the transitions are. We'd have to work through that. Mrs. Webster at my. Reese, how would you know if you are a bass singer or baritone? Is it tone range or a mix of a few things? It's a mix of the few. And also the locations of the secondo passaggio and zonal passaggio. Ultimate range comes into that equation. But yeah, I mean, yeah, for starters, that's we give consideration too to the overall characteristics and qualities of one's voice as well. So, what are the qualities of your voice around, C3 to C4 or C2 to C3, or can you even sing to C2? All of those things are taken into account when developing or when trying to distinguish Fach, which is why it's kind of I understand that people want to know what their Fach is, their vocal range, their characterization, but it's unrealistic to kind of sort of throw out a few notes that are on the keyboard and be able to make a distinction. In rare occurrences where people have given me incredibly detailed kind of comments on locations of secondo of the passaggio, where they sense the primo passaggio, perceptions about qualities in fairly narrow ranges of their overall tessitura, that I can say, like, well, that probably sounds like this, but we really need to work through it. And furthermore, none of this takes into account the tendencies of the vocalist from the past. So, if someone's saying, like, my transition to head voice is A4, But what they're really doing is they're squeezing out their thyroarytenoid chest voice to G sharp 4, and then it pops off into head voice, which their definition of head voice happens to be this airy falsetto tone production, not actual head voice. Then you can't know that until you hear them, because the language is used differently across different teaching platforms. Yes, we have. Somewhere in that last 20 minutes, I start to get a little bit loopy. I think it's the rapidity of the questions, which I love and is so much fun, but also gets my brain kind of going. Balloon float, Striker Kane. Cool. Mrs. Webster, laughing out, we have reached the silly. Yes, we have. My Mrs. Webster, Striker or Ale at Striker, Striker at Ale, Striker. My number one thing I think Freddie had that made him great was huge lower jaw, Welsh genetics. I'd have to look into that. That's interesting. David Walsh, perhaps in time I'll do a book. The thing is that most of my teaching is, one might argue that almost all teaching is derivative. However, I'd like to do, I would need more empirical data to compile a book. And I haven't really done my teaching up to this point in that capacity. I did do the guidebook to the YouTube channel, but I know what you're meaning. And that is probably somewhere in my future. When in my future, I'm not sure. Probably somewhat far beyond the secondo passaggio teaching method that I'm going to do once I get back. Though I am going to do a performance anxiety primer when I get back as well. That's the other project I want for this year. And I want to do an update to the guidebook, because there's been a year of videos that need to be cross-referenced with the rest of the book. Yeah, that's very kind, Mai. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I will make sure I let everybody know when that becomes a reality. All right, phone. Natasha, I'm actually listening to him now. Thanks. Striker K, my favorite song and one I can nearly sing is Fat Bottom Girls. Awesome tune. Reese, my voice is light and kind of nasally, so I was thinking I'm a baritone. My range is C sharp, 2 lows, F sharp, 4 belt, and D5 head voice. That's inconsistent with baritone ranges. D5 head voice is entirely inconsistent. That's not the definition of head voice. That's not even where the falsetto transition point for the typical baritone voice is. And if you're nasally, that would suggest that you are too far forward in your mask resonance and possibly partially adducting the vocal fold in a wider range of your voice than is entirely advantageous. So all of those things need to be balanced out before an accurate assessment of your Fach can be done. Striker, been humming it all morning. Natasha, my favorite song of him is Too Much Love Will Kill You Every Time. I've got to hear that. Thanks for an awesome live. Yeah, thank you, everyone. I love all voices, Andrew. I really do. I go on and on about it, like the alto's this and the mezzo's that and everything. Singing is awesome. Like, singing is just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And every one of the Fachs has things that they do better than every other Fach. Right? I mean, tenors can basically only dream of the richness of the baritone low range. And baritones can kind of only dream about the brilliance and ease and sort of, I'm not sure how to even put it, but of the tenor middle range. We all the different Fachs have something to offer, I think. Thank you all so very much. Thank you. It's been over a year of live events, and I've only missed a couple because I was sick. But I'm going to have 2 weeks off. Hopefully I will see you all on August 5th. Enjoy the videos that are going to be released. In the meantime, if you see comments popping up on the channel where they're like, does this guy ever respond or something like that, if you happen to see that, consider leaving a quick note saying that I'm currently on vacation, just so that people know that when I get back, I'm gonna I'll try to sift through all the comments, or as many of the comments as I can when I get back. But I would really greatly appreciate your stewardship while I'm away. Thank you very, very much. I really, really appreciate it. Take good care of your voices. Enjoy singing. I will see you in a couple weeks, unless I happen to run into you in the high Sierra around Yosemite Valley. Bye.